The Mi 10 is Xiaomi's flagship for 2020 and the iPhone SE is Apple's budget offering for the year. How do they both compare in terms of cameras? You be the judge. The Mi 10 has a 108 megapixel primary camera whereas the iPhone SE has a 12 megapixel sensor. While the Mi 10 has additional focal length, we are only going to stick to the primary camera since the SE has just a single lens. Also, the iPhone SE does not have an inbuilt night mode, so we have used the Neural Camera app in order to capture low light photos. That being said, get ready to pick your favorite. We wouldn't be speaking too much to influence your decisions. Instead, we'll just mention the key pointers that we observed about the two images. Starting off, we don't see any major difference between these two pictures, except for B is slightly more saturated in terms of the colors, whereas the level of detail is also more or less similar in both images. The same trend continues even here. We see that B has slightly more pleasing colors and the level of detail also is again very similar. A actually looks slightly washed out, if you may. Not really, but when you compare it to B side by side, the colors on B look better to the eyes. So here we see that B has slightly better dynamic range than A. If you see far off objects, you actually see that the greens in the trees are much better visible on B when compared to A. Whereas A has retained slightly better detail. Again, there's not much difference here. B looks more saturated as usual when compared to A. If you ask me, B looks more real to life than A. The object in real actually looked more similar to what B has portrayed it as when compared to A. Here we see a clear difference in the white balance. The clouds and the sky actually looks better on B when compared to A. Whereas A has slightly better details in the leaves and also the colors look slightly better on A on the leaves when compared to B. But yeah, it's a toss up between the color of the sky and the leaves. You be the judge, which one would you pick? Here is a close-up shot of some flowers and there is literally nothing here that can be said about them. There is no difference at all, be it colors or the level of details. Both have done a very good job. Here we see that A has better punchy colors when compared to B. B has slightly overexposed the shot and even the level of details, if you observe the stone which is at the base of the post, A has retained a lot more detail when compared to B. Here we see that B has produced a slightly brighter image when compared to A. Now A looks slightly punchier if you look at the skies, but again if you look at the trees at the bottom right, then you'll see that B has better colors and has retained the shadows and the highlights really well, whereas A has gotten the shadows low and the trees kind of look dark. This is another case where both the images have handled white balance very differently. A has gone for a warmer and a slightly more muted look, whereas B has portrayed the sky very well. The level of detail on A is better when compared to B when you look at the ends of the leaves, whereas the dynamic range is very similar more or less. I feel the colors are better on B when compared to A. Again, a clear difference in white balance. B has shot up the warmth, whereas A is slightly more natural. After 10 images, you pick which one you like better, A or B. Moving on, this is just a shot of a tire of a car, and as you can see here, unlike the previous image, A has gone for a warmer look, whereas B has gone for a completely cool look. And if you ask me, B looks slightly closer to reality, whereas A has slightly more warmth. The level of detail in the rims, if you see, is better on A when compared to B. This is another close-up shot of a plant where if you see closely, B actually seems to have retained slightly better details at the ends of those plants. Another nice shot to look at the dynamic range. And here as well, the colors and the level of details are pretty similar. A is slightly higher on the details, but if you look at the colors, both phones have done a very good job of handling the direct sunlight. And again, not a lot of difference here to tell apart. A slightly seems to have better dynamic range if you look at the trees in the background when compared to B. Another clear example of a discrepancy in white balance. Both phones are not very accurate when it comes to white balance, or at least they're not very consistent. A has again gone for a warmer look, whereas B has retained the colors in the sky really well. Also, the dynamic range on B looks slightly better. So this is the Mi Band on my wrist, and A has made me look very pale, the skin on my hand, whereas B has again retained the colors really well. Well, it's again time for the white balance to completely get reversed. B, as you see, is a lot warmer when compared to A. I wouldn't say it's completely off reality, but A just looks slightly better than B, at least in terms of the white balance handling. So here if you see, B has managed to portray the actual red color of the car really well, whereas A has captured a lot more details and shadows. So again, you be the judge whether you like the colors on A or B better, or if you like more detail. So with this image, I think you would get an idea by now that B is handling the skies better than A. Again, the colors here are very different, and the same can be said about this image too. Here you would see that B has a slightly brighter image when compared to A, but if you ask me, A looks slightly closer to reality. However, if you look at the plant at the bottom or the small tree that is there, B has managed to retain the green colors very well, whereas A has darkened it and almost made it black. Another big difference in white balance. B is way warmer than it actually was. A is more close to reality here, and A also has a lot more details. That was it with the second round of the outdoor shots. We'll have a poll here again. Do pick which one you like better, A or B. Moving on to indoor shots. Again, there is a slight difference in color here. I would say A is slightly more accurate. Moving on to this image, you'd see that B has retained slightly more details when compared to A. And also the color representation is slightly better because the lighting in the room was slightly warm. Here you would see A is clearly doing a better job with the colors and the details. B is completely washed out and is very soft. A has retained a lot of details. But B hits right back here. If you compare the color of the wood and the bell itself, B has done a better job than A. Again, here with the pineapple, there's a clear difference in color. B looks slightly brighter when compared to A, but it's just a toss-up between which you like better. Here's a poll. Let us know which one you like better, A or B, in terms of indoor shots. Moving on to low light shots. Here we see again a clear difference in the colors. A has gone for a warmer look, whereas B has a slightly more muted look, but B has a lot of noise in the sky, whereas A has managed to eliminate that. Here again, it's a toss-up between which one do you like better in terms of the colors, but B is slightly more noisy when compared to A. Here you would see B is slightly brighter than A. The sky especially looks brighter on B, whereas A slightly looks more closer to reality. In this image, however, the colors totally go for a toss in between both. A actually is slightly deviated from reality, but it is much cleaner when compared to B, while B looks more realistic, as in it looks like you have clicked the picture at night. It has a lot of noise, which makes A slightly better in our opinion. But again, you be the judge. Here too, you would see that A makes the image look like it has been shot in daylight. The sky is completely messed up, whereas the level of detail retained is very good. Whereas in B, you see that the sky looks more real-like. It shows that you've shot the image at night, but the level of detail is not that good and it is slightly noisy. So again, you would see A is much cleaner here when compared to B. And in this image, both are actually very similar, except for the white balance. A has gone for a much cooler look, whereas B is very warm. Now the light in this scenario was slightly warm, but none of these have actually managed to get the colors right. It was somewhere in between both. So in this image, again, the light was slightly warm, so I feel B has done a better job when compared to A. And here again, you would see B is actually slightly sharper when compared to A with the plants. So A has gone for a much more muted look in this image, whereas B has shot up the saturation levels on the garbage bins. Also, if you look in the background, A has actually not retained the building very well, whereas B has managed to do that quite well. Now here B looks slightly brighter when compared to A and is also slightly warmer, but A has better details when compared to B, but B looks more pleasing to the eye. So again, you decide which one you like better. This was the final low light image, so we are going to leave a poll. Do let us know which one you thought was better, A or B. Now the final category is selfies, and we have clicked the selfies in portrait mode. Now here if you see, A has actually managed to portray the face really well. Even the skin tones are really nice, whereas B has slightly gone for a warmer look. However, A has better details and the edge detection on both of them seem very similar. If you look at this image, B hits right back with the portrait selfie. This time the edge detection is much better, the skin tones are very good, and the exposure is also handled very well. Again, in this final selfie that we have, we see that B has performed better than A in terms of the skin tones. The colors and the edge detection as well is better on B. If you look at the right ear on A, that's slightly blurred out the ear as well as the Realme Buds Air that I'm wearing. Whereas on B, it has managed to retain all of that very well. And also we observe that B is slightly more consistent in colors when compared to A. Here's a poll, you pick which one you like better in terms of selfies. Now that you've made your choice, here's the reveal. A is the Xiaomi Mi 10, whereas B is the iPhone SE 2020. So, which one did you pick? We personally think that the iPhone SE did slightly better in terms of colors and white balance during daylight, whereas the lack of a dedicated night mode got the overall performance of the SE down during low light situations. The Mi 10 of course preserves a lot more detail given that it has a 108 megapixel sensor even upon zooming in. Either way, let us know which one you voted for in the comments below, and if you thought this video was fun, share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching and we'll see you around.